Listen closely. This is not a tale of heroes with horns on their helmets. This is not an epic adventure story on the high seas. This is a story of pure terror. A night where the darkness came not just from the sky, but from the hearts of men. A night where prayers were answered not by angels, but by the snarls of bloodthirsty barbarians from the north. This is the darkest night in the history of the British Isles. This is the night of the massacre at Lindisfarne. Imagine yourself in the year 793 AD. This place, Lindisfarne Priory, is a beacon of civilization, a holy island separated from the mainland by the tides. Here, monks lived in peace, copying sacred manuscripts with golden ink, worshipping their god, and believing the world outside their monastery walls was orderly and safe. They were wrong. They were utterly unprepared for what was coming. They thought the first sound was a storm. The crash of waves louder than usual. Wind howling with an unnatural rage. But it was not a storm. It was the keels of Viking longships grinding onto the rocky shore. With lethal speed, the shadows moved. They were not ordinary soldiers marching in formation. They were a storm of men. These men from the north, from Denmark, Norway, moved with the efficiency of killers. Their eyes were accustomed to the darkness of the sea, and now they gazed upon the most unexpected treasure trove, an undefended community, full of gold, silver, sacred objects, and unarmed souls. The tension begins to peak. Imagine you are a monk awakened by screams. You peer from the window of your cell. What you see are muscular silhouettes wielding axes, swords, and spears. They shout in a harsh, foreign tongue, a language that sounds like curses from hell itself. They did not come to trade. They did not come to negotiate. Their expressions, even from a distance, radiated a single, clear intent: the hunt. And then, the massacre began. This was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The monks, whose weapons were prayers and holy books, stood no chance. They were hunted like sheep in their own pen. Viking axes split the very skulls that, just hours before, had been pondering deep theology. Their swords pierced bodies clad only in simple robes. Blood, once used to write sacred illuminations, now flooded the stone floor of the monastery, becoming dark red ink for a manuscript of death. They did not just kill. They were psychological terrorists, the first of their kind. They performed ritual desecration to shatter the souls and minds of any survivors. Altars were smashed. Relics, the bones of saints, were tossed aside and trampled underfoot. Golden crosses were ripped from their places, not merely as plunder, but as a symbol that the god worshipped here was powerless. That their gods, Odin and Thor, gods of war and thunder, were stronger this night. Then, the fire was set. A fire that turned the house of God into a giant torch lighting up the darkness, a cruel signal of victory and a warning to all of England. Its smoke billowed high, carrying the scent of charred flesh and burning wood, and the scent of absolute triumph for the attackers. Within hours, it was all over. All that remained was destruction, scattered corpses, and a silence more terrifying than the screams themselves. The Vikings, their ships now laden with gold, silver, jewels, and captives to be enslaved, disappeared back into the sea mist, as quickly as they had come. They left behind an island that was no longer a holy place, but a mass grave. The impact? Its shockwaves rattled all of Christian Europe. This was a direct blow to the heart of faith. If God could not save his own holy monastery, then what about our villages? Our towns? Our lives? Fear became an epidemic, spreading faster than any army. From the fury of the Northmen, "Deliver us, O Lord," that prayer was now etched across the land. Lindisfarne was the turning point. It was the key that unlocked the floodgates. The raid proved something to the Vikings, that Europe was weak, rich, and ripe for the taking. It was an open invitation. The Viking Age, an era of conquest, rape, murder, and inevitable slave trading, had officially begun. For the next 300 years, the terror from the north would be a specter haunting every coastal village. But here lies the biggest twist, the one rarely told. Look closer at these barbarians. They were not just bloodthirsty murderers. That is only one side of the coin. The Vikings who attacked Lindisfarne were brilliant strategists. They chose the most symbolic, most shocking, and least guarded target. It was a perfectly engineered act of terror designed to maximize psychological impact. They were not a wild band of pirates, they were a special forces unit conducting psyops before the term even existed. And the greatest irony? In slaughtering the monks and defiling the church, they inadvertently ended up preserving history. Many precious manuscripts they looted from monasteries were eventually sold, traded, and dispersed. The gold they stole funded larger expeditions, which would ultimately take them to Russia, Constantinople, even North America, forever altering the world map. So, Lindisfarne is not just a story of victims and perpetrators. It is the story of how an act of brutal violence, seemingly barbaric, was in fact the first step of a people who would change Europe forever. They came with axe and fire, but their legacy is a connected world, in a cruel, bloody, and utterly unexpected way. That darkest night was not an end. It was a horrifying beginning. And we still feel its reverberations today.